Hey everyone, welcome back to Dan's Details. What we're doing today is I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to start the process of the four-wheel disc brakes on this 72 C10. Show you what kit we have. We went with 13-inch CPP front, 12-inch CPP rear. So the rear on this truck has drums currently. We're going to convert them. Let's swap around. This truck already had a disc brake conversion on the front. They're pretty small. We don't know the brand. So we're going to go ahead and convert those so they match. And then the rear drums, we are going to put the 12-inch disc on. I'll start today off by showing you what comes in the kit, how we're going to assemble. So it comes with a drop spindle, 2-inch drop spindle. I've already installed the brackets, so this bracket bolts on if you use the larger rotor. Nice 2-disc or a 2-piston CPP front caliper. New wheel bearing hub assembly. And what I've done is it's drilled for multiple different applications, it appears. So what I've done is I've went through and I've marked where my studs go through, and the studs, then I transferred that over to this. The studs are ARP style studs. They'll bolt in from the back, and then that will be your wheel stud. So we'll get started assembling this. Okay, so let's get started on installing these front calipers. I'll do a separate video on the rear setup. Once we get to that, we'll break it up into 2 different segments. First thing, remove the wheel. Next, we're going to remove the dust cap. Get a flathead screwdriver. And it appears that these brakes have not been on this truck very long, because they're in really good shape. Everything's clean. The bearings in this have not been on very long because the grease is red and pristine looking. Lots of grease. Red and tacky, probably by Lucas, which is a good grease. I like that. But it's going to be messy. Set that down over here. And I'm going to take a rag and wipe some of that grease out. So I'm not playing in grease all night long. And this is your typical style hub assembly with the, you can see, with the shaft and the inner and outer bearing and then the set nut. What we're going to is more of a newer style, I would call it. You see a lot of these newer style bearings in newer Chevrolet trucks, Fords, Dodges, where they have a 3-bolt hub that bolts onto the spindle, and then the CV shaft, if it's 4-wheel drive, will travel through and it'll have a set nut on the outside. If it's 2-wheel drive, it won't, obviously won't have a CV shaft, but pretty neat setup, pretty nice. So get the cotter pins out of here and go from there. they done. I love playing in grease. Part of it. And we'll get new pins with the new. Well, I'm gonna struggle with these, aren't I? Shouldn't be that hard. Okay. Go ahead and take the center nut off. Get it loose. Get a rag, wipe the grease off of my tools. And the setup on this particular truck right now, I'm not sure the brand. It could be CPP. I'm not certain, but we're going to take care of them. We're going to pull them off, treat them nice, keep everything together. And I know I have a couple friends that show interest in them. We will repurpose them. Get the split pin off of the tie rod end. Get that out so we can get this wheel turned a little bit for you. Treat it the same way because they are in there. Okay. We'll treat this as if also, we'll treat this as if it's on the ground. I'm going to show you how to, what we may have is, this bag has a little bit of air in it. So even if it was still a spring suspension instead of air ride, we would support this lower control arm, not let it fall. If you're on the ground and not on a lift, do that with a floor jack. I'm going to use my support tripod and support that so nothing flops around. Now to unlodge this, we're going to strike this with a hammer. That'll unlodge, tie it in, keep the hardware, put it back on there for later use. And I'm going to go ahead and raise the truck up, get my support under the lower control arm, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we have some light for you, and as you can tell, okay. So, tie rod end removed. Now we have some play here. We'll go ahead and get the caliper off. What I've done is I've lifted the truck up higher, and what I will do is I will support this bottom control arm. Even though we have air ride, there's air in the bag, so it acts as a spring. So if you were coil sprung, still here. I'd still put some tension on that to hold it so that when we unconnect or unbolt the upper and lower ball joint, we don't have any potential issues with this dropping down and then us not being able to get it back up there or having tension on it. Go ahead and get this caliper off. Like I said, I'm not sure what brand this is. Somebody here may know in the comments. They're nice pieces, just single piston, and they would come in handy for someone for sure. Pads are brand new. Like I said, there's no miles on these. I'm gonna go ahead and dangle that for a second while I get my cardboard. So when I unhook the brake line, I'm not spilling brake fluid all over my concrete floor. Is that 12 millimeter? Unhook the brake line. Try not to make a huge mess. I'm going to take the brake line, drop the bolt obviously. Take the brake line and set it up out of the way. Here. We will be replacing these. Not today. Okay, so that's out of the way. Take the nut loose. Like I said, we're going to hold on to this, bring the bearing, washer, spindle with it. We're going to keep this in a safe spot. So the next person has everything. So what I think is, this truck has air ride. I think these are already 2-inch drop spindles. They have some markings on them. I think they're specific for that brake caliper perhaps. I'm not certain, but we're gonna go ahead and put the new CPP ones on since they go with the new calipers. And they've got, you get the cotter pins out or split pins, whatever everybody likes to call them. Boy, this one looks rough. See if we can get it out. We're obviously going to put brand new ones in. So I'm not going to mess around with it. Try to salvage it. I'm going to clip it and yank it out and move on. Okay. I'm not sure exactly what size this is. Okay. 24 millimeter or probably 15/16 maybe. Standard. One thing I've noticed is, now I know you don't want to just cram these ball joints down on super tight, but man, these things are loose. And I mean, I know there's a cert. I don't like to just impact them down on there and jam them down on there, but man, these things, and they're not going to move anywhere because of the cotter pins, but I want them to be a little tighter than that. I think that top one's 18 millimeter. 19. And this will be the same scenario if the ball joints are seated in this spindle. Then we will strike on the side of the spindle only. And be careful, I'd like to throw the nut back on these if I'm going to strike it with a hammer, just because if you slip and hit the threads on here, it creates a whole lot more work for you than you really want, and is not necessary as long as you're careful. A ratchet would have been a lot easier. Okay, so the top one, I already see it coming out of the spindle, so it's not lodged. Pick up, hold on to the washers and the nut, castle nut. Bottom one, are we lucky? Oh yeah, okay. That's off. As you saw, in the assembly part of the spindle, then we're going with this really nice, brand new CPP one. And like I stated, the hub assembly and the wheel bearing is similar to that of the new trucks. 3 bolts, no shaft with bearings. I mean, this is one assembly. Very nice setup. I'm actually really happy with it. I've never dealt with CPP before, but yeah, I'm pretty impressed. And we'll go right back with this spindle. How the other one came off. They had ran these washers. I'm not sure they're absolutely necessary, but it'll create the space that we want. So the castle nuts and the cotter pins will line up. Once these seat, I think it'll be about perfect. Go ahead and torque the bottom one down. Like I said, we don't want to get crazy here. Okay. And so what I'm seeing, and I'll make the mistakes for us since I'm doing the video and there is no instructions. Obviously, this portion of that spindle is thicker than that one that we took off. So the need for these washers, let's see, should we leave one? We'll leave one to give us a little bit of a shoulder there. See how big that hole is. This really, if you look at the castle nut, yeah, we're going to let the shoulder of the castle nut sit right down on that spindle like normal. And I think the washers were used previously, maybe just because I like that a lot better. Let's see if we can get it lined up a little more. Perfect. Okay. Do the top. I think the top one we're going to pull the washers out too. I don't think they're necessary in this application, like they were with the other spindles. And I think that was just, I think they did that just because once that seats down in there, like I said, I'm learning with you guys because there is no instructions that I have found. I'm going to use the one washer because the idea with the castle nut is to be able to use the cotter pin and it still make contact with the castle nut. It's common sense, obviously, but and this is going to sink way down in there. Here we go again. Bear with me. By the time it pulls that ball joint down in there and seats it, we're going to need some sort of spacing. So maybe they weren't so crazy after all by having that on there. Feeling good about it now. Oh, yeah, I like that. A little bit more. We're not getting crazy with it, but tighter than we were. So if you look now, holes lined up, castle nuts in the proper spot. I like it. Moving on to the brake caliper. And in this instance, it would be beneficial to have a second set of hands, but I'm going to try to wrestle around by myself, see if we can make this work, because that's pretty well what I do. This big beautiful thing. Oh yeah. Bolts started by hand. Never started with an impact, obviously. And those are 15/16. We'll go ahead, reinstall tie rod in. And on the other side, I've worked on this truck numerous times, but on the other side I replaced the tie rod ends. And I think this kit comes with new tie rod ends designed specifically for the lowering spindles. So what I'll do is I'll come back and replace that tie rod end with the new stuff. For tonight's purpose, we're gonna tighten her up, take a good look at it. Really nice setup. Okay, release the pressure off the jack. So that is the assembly and installation of the front calipers with 13-inch rotors of the CPP brakes for a 67 to 72 C10. I appreciate you watching, and please stay tuned. We're going to do the rear next.